The knock came at exactly 6:12 a.m. Sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Mark Sullivan froze mid-step, his 5-year-old son Caleb still asleep on the couch beside him, wrapped in a faded superhero blanket. No one ever knocked that early, not in their quiet apartment complex in Columbus, Ohio, and certainly not someone who arrived in a sleek black car that looked worth more than everything Mark owned combined. When he opened the door, he almost dropped the coffee mug in his hand. Standing in the hallway, dressed in a tailored navy coat and heels that echoed against the concrete floor, was Victoria Hayes, the CEO of the company where Mark worked as a maintenance supervisor. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected miracles, take a moment right now to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that one small moment can change everything. Mark hadn't expected to see her again outside the charity gala the night before. He especially hadn't expected her to be standing at his front door at sunrise. The previous evening still felt surreal. Mark had only attended the gala because his manager insisted someone from the maintenance department should represent the staff. He wore his only suit, slightly tight at the shoulders, and spent most of the night near the buffet table, hoping not to draw attention. Victoria, on the other hand, commanded the room effortlessly. She was known across Ohio's corporate circles for her sharp mind and relentless work ethic. Under her leadership, Hayes Innovations had doubled in value in 5 years. To employees, she was respected, but distant, untouchable. Late in the evening, fate, or clumsiness, intervened. Mark tripped slightly while carrying a tray of sparkling water and nearly collided with her. Glasses rattled, a few guests gasped, but instead of anger, Victoria laughed, a genuine, unguarded laugh that seemed to surprise even her. They ended up talking for almost an hour. For the first time in years, Mark felt seen, not as the single dad from maintenance, but as a person. He told her about Caleb, about losing his wife, Hannah, to cancer 3 years earlier, about learning to braid hair for school recitals, even though Caleb had decided he preferred soccer cleats over ballet shoes halfway through kindergarten. Victoria listened. When she admitted she hadn't had a real home-cooked meal in months and barely slept more than 4 hours a night, Mark had smiled awkwardly and said something that was meant as a harmless joke. "You could move in," he'd laughed. "We've got a couch and a fridge that only hums loudly on Tuesdays." She had smiled in a way he couldn't quite read. Now, here she was. The hallway light flickered overhead as Mark stared at her, unsure whether he was still dreaming. Victoria's expression wasn't polished or corporate. It was tired. Her eyes were slightly red, and her usual composure seemed thinner, like glass about to crack. She explained that she hadn't slept. That something he said last night kept replaying in her mind, not the joke, but the warmth behind it, the simplicity, the honesty. Mark felt his face burn with embarrassment. He tried to apologize for being inappropriate, but she shook her head. She hadn't come because she misunderstood him. She had come because she needed somewhere to breathe. Mark's apartment was small. 2 bedrooms, peeling paint near the window, a couch that sagged in the middle, but it was filled with evidence of life. Crayon drawings taped to the fridge, tiny sneakers by the door, the faint scent of cinnamon oatmeal lingering in the air. Victoria stepped inside as Caleb stirred awake, blinking at the unfamiliar woman in heels standing near his toy dinosaurs. Children have a way of breaking tension without trying. Caleb waved and asked if she liked pancakes. Within minutes, Mark found himself flipping batter on a dented pan, while Victoria sat cross-legged on the floor, helping Caleb assemble a plastic T-Rex. The contrast was almost surreal. The powerful CEO who negotiated million-dollar deals was now laughing because a 5-year-old insisted dinosaurs needed bedtime stories. Over breakfast, pieces of truth began to surface. Victoria confessed that the night before, she'd finalized paperwork to sell a significant portion of her company to a larger corporation. A deal that would make her wealthier than she'd ever imagined, but also strip her of control. Her board believed it was the smart move, the safe move. But somewhere along the way, she had realized she built the company to create something meaningful, not just profitable. Mark listened quietly, stirring his coffee long after the sugar dissolved. He didn't have an MBA, he didn't speak in corporate jargon, but he knew what it felt like to lose something irreplaceable. After Hannah passed, people told him to be strong, to move forward, to do what was best. But strength, he learned, wasn't about making the logical decision. It was about choosing what aligned with your heart, even when it terrified you. Victoria looked around his modest kitchen and asked him how he managed it all. He didn't pretend it was easy. He told her about the nights he cried after Caleb fell asleep, about choosing between overtime shifts and school recitals, about feeling invisible in rooms filled with people more important than him. But he also told her about small victories, the first time Caleb tied his shoes alone, the mornings when laughter replaced grief, the quiet pride of knowing he showed up every single day. Something shifted in the room. Not romantic, not dramatic, just human. By noon, Victoria had made a decision. She called her assistant and postponed the signing of the deal. Mark didn't fully grasp the magnitude of what she was doing, but he understood the courage it required. Over the next few weeks, something unexpected unfolded. Victoria began visiting often, not to escape, but to remember. She brought groceries. She learned how to cook scrambled eggs without checking her phone. She started asking employees, including maintenance staff, about their ideas for improving the company. Rumors spread, of course. A CEO spending time in a modest apartment in Columbus wasn't typical behavior. Some executives questioned her judgment. Investors grew nervous. But Victoria stood firm. Instead of selling control, she restructured the company. She launched an employee advisory council. She increased wages for lower-tier staff. She created flexible schedules for single parents. The board resisted at first. Then profits rose. Employee turnover dropped. Productivity soared. People worked harder when they felt valued. And Mark? He never asked for anything. He never expected his offhand joke to ripple through a corporation. But one evening, months later, Victoria stood in the same kitchen where it all began and thanked him. Not for advice, but for reminding her what success was supposed to feel like. Caleb, now fully convinced Victoria was part dinosaur expert, handed her a crayon drawing of the three of them standing under a bright yellow sun. Mark realized something profound that night. Sometimes the most powerful impact doesn't come from wealth or status. It comes from vulnerability, from opening your imperfect door when someone knocks. If this story is touching your heart so far, please take a moment to like the video and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness can change destinies. And before we reach the final moments of this journey, I have a special request. Comment the word hope below if you believe even a small act of warmth can transform a life. Because here's the truth. Victoria never officially moved in. But she did start coming over every Sunday for pancakes. And eventually the black luxury car in the parking lot stopped looking out of place. 1 year later, Hayes Innovations hosted another gala. This time, Mark didn't stand near the buffet table. He stood confidently beside Victoria as she announced a new community initiative funding support programs for widowed parents across the United States. She credited an unexpected teacher for reminding her why she started. Mark felt Hannah's absence that night, but he also felt something new, not replacement, renewal. Life hadn't erased his grief. It had woven something beautiful around it. As the evening ended, Victoria squeezed his hand, not as a CEO, but as someone who had chosen courage over comfort. And Mark realized that sometimes a joke, spoken lightly in a crowded room, can become the doorway to transformation. The knock at 6:12 a.m. had changed everything. Not because a CEO showed up, but because a single dad had the courage to open the door. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that love, humility, and second chances still exist in this world, please like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement helps these stories reach more hearts that may be quietly waiting for hope. And remember, sometimes the smallest invitation can lead to the biggest miracle.